Wellness Week Live. What's up, everybody? This is DJ Anthony, all the way here in New Jersey. I got a special guest, and I'm so excited because we have the book here, and my special guest is PhD Michael Franzblau. How are you? And the author of The Optimism Cure. Michael, thanks for coming on to Wellness Week. How are you?
I'm excited to be here, Anthony. This is what I've wanted to do in a while, and thank you for putting me on.
Oh, come on, listen. And I read your book cover to cover, and you know it's funny. I will say on the bottom it says how seniors can create a longer, healthier, more fulfilling life. But you know what? I would say anybody, whether you're 10 years old or 110, it really, because everything you wrote in this book, it was a great read. I encourage people to go out and get it, but it was applicable to just life, and I'm reading it and I'm like, yeah, like any age. So,
it's interesting that you should say that, because once people started reading it, they're calling me and they're saying, I'm not a senior, but this actually works for me.
I'm not a senior, and yeah, for sure. So let me start off by asking you, why write this book? What made you want to write this book?
It's a good question. I grew up in Brooklyn in the 1940s, and I thought the world was my oyster. Nothing bad could happen. And I was very blessed. I don't know how I came to think that, but until I was 21, I never had a thought that was pessimistic. Things were going along great.
Wow.
And I thought that was the way the world meant, it was meant to be. And then I got married, and that was nice. And then I had some physics. I was a physicist at the time. I was a research physicist. And I got into some industrial laboratories, and it was just terrible. My life was collapsing, and I said, right. Where's all this optimism leaking out?
Yeah.
And it took a while for me to recover and find my purpose. So I've been thinking about this stuff for a very long time. And then when I was 64, I was diagnosed with prostate cancer.
Right.
Out of nowhere, I bought some insurance, and I failed the physical. I had 3 kids and a wife, and the kids were grown, but we were still helping them. And there's a little bit of a long story. I'll try to make it short.
Yeah, go ahead. No, listen, yeah, no problem.
So I went to the specialist in New York, and they said, the first one said, you're going to die. And that wasn't a great thing to hear.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah.
And but it turned out that there was a clinic in Georgia that my wife found out about through a friend that had a radiation cure.
Right.
And I applied for it, and I came down, and it actually worked. But this is a good story. I hope you like this story.
Yeah.
So what happens, I hope you never have to experience this, but in prostate cancer, they usually start by embedding radioactive seeds down there. So you come and you do that. It takes a couple of hours, and then you have to rest for a week. So my wife and I did that, and my wife and I were getting ready to fly back to New York, and we went out for dinner, and we got lost. So now there's no GPS then. It's the middle of the night. We're in some industrial area in the dark of night.
Right.
And we couldn't find our way. So we didn't know what to do. So a guy walks across our field of view, holding a whole bunch of money in his hand. And he's obviously going to a service station. An Atlanta service station. So I called him over, and I said, we're lost. Can you help us? Can you help us? He said, I'm actually lost too. He says, and let me tell you my story. I'm a minister, and I have a busload of high school age girls. The bus is broken down. I'm trying to get it fixed. We're not from here. My church is going to be here at midnight, but I don't know what to do. Can you lend me $36? So, we thought about that. And then he said to me, so why are you here, by the way? And I said, well, I'm here because I have prostate cancer, and I'm here for a treatment. And he looks at me and he says, would you mind if I cured you in the name of Jesus? That was the best offer I've had all day. So,
I'll take it.
So 2 Jews from New York are sitting in the car, my wife and
right. How's that joke start? Right. And a minister comes walking by.
And he starts by having I put my arm on the window, and he grabs me with 2 hands, and he starts wailing to the sky. And every couple of seconds, he says, Jesus, cure this guy. And then he'll say, Jesus, I mean, we'd all jump.
Yeah.
It went on for about 3 minutes. And I could see something was happening to my wife. She was like, looked a little ghostly. I don't know what it was. And I felt this tingling inside me. And so he says, okay. He stops. He says, you have nothing to worry about. Jesus just cured you. I said, that's really wonderful. I said, and my wife turned to me and said, I know, I felt it. So,
there you go. Okay.
And all of a sudden, this optimism bloomed in my chest. And we gave him the money, and we didn't want it back. We had to getting it. We had to get on a plane anyhow the next morning.
Yeah.
And then when I got to this this radiotherapy clinics of Georgia, there were 100 guys from all over the world who came for prostate treatments. It turned out I was the only one who was optimistic. I was unafraid. I told this story a lot, and most of the people were born again Christians.
Right.
And we got very friendly. I'd go to church with them, but they were saying, "How can you feel this?" I said, "This is your God."
Right. You're not even Christian, and you're the one that's the best Christian.
Exactly. And so that was a wonderful 7 weeks. But while I was there, I needed a purpose. I tried to find a purpose for my life. I was retired. I had, So I started researching in the mornings. I got very interested in how financial aid for college works.
Right.
And I spent 7 weeks researching it. And I call my wife every morning. She's back in New York. And I tell her how the book is going. And I come out with this manuscript, unedited, but it had a lot of good information in it. And I got back to New York knowing that I was cured, really optimistic about my future. And now I had found but do you want to hear all this? I mean, this is what.
Yeah, listen, that's why I got you on the show there, Mike. Come on. Okay. Give it to me. Give it to the viewers. They need to hear it. People need to hear hope.
Well, so I had a young friend who was in the financial area, and he said, you know what? Maybe we can get this published and do an infomercial with it. I have a friend who owns an infomercial company. So he invited his friends to his country club, and I invited my friends. We had about 30, 40 people there. And they had all come to find out what this was all about. And all we had was this manuscript that had never been edited. So my friend says, Mike, get up and tell them what's going on. So I got up and I looked at them and I said, my goal, my purpose now is to send 1 million kids to college who would never have had the chance.
Right.
And I shut up. And one guy raised his hand and he said, can I ask a question? He said, sure. He says, how much are the shares?
Yeah. He's
$30,000 per share.
Right.
Just how many can I buy?
Wow.
And about an hour or two later, we had $450,000.
Wow.
And a bunch of investors. And we produced the book in Hollywood. And now you have to remember, I'm like 65 now.
Right.
And everybody else is 40.
Right. My age almost. Yeah.
Your age, exactly. And we did make the infomercial. Oprah picked the book as a must read.
Oh, wow.
But it didn't sell. It didn't work. They used up all the money. But I was launched now on a way of living that fueled by optimism and gratitude
and purpose.
And I had a purpose now. And so I went and did some other things I'll tell you about later. But basically I studied. There's a lot of data about what optimism does for us.
Right.
And it's really unbelievable. I mean,
Mike, I would also say, correct me if I'm wrong, I think having the optimistic mindset, it's almost irrelevant if something good or bad happens. It's the mindset is going to cushion the ride no matter what the outcome is. Why not have a positive mindset, even if the outcome is going to be horrible? Like just do you want a rough ride or do you want a cushy ride to, you know what I mean? Like, I think the means to the end, because I try to tell myself that, like, no matter what the outcome is going to be, I'm not going to stress myself out. I'm not going to contribute to this harsh environment. I'm going to do what I can do to make it as comfortable for me. And if the crap hits the fan, it hits the fan, but I'm not going to defeat me. Defeat is going to have to come get me.
I love that, Anthony. That's really, really powerful stuff. Really powerful.
Yeah. So, because I think some people might listen to you and me and say, well, I'm trying the optimistic mindset, or I'm trying to be optimistic, but that's not a guarantee that you're going to get what you want. It's just saying, have the mindset and breathe and just, don't add any more weight to your shoulders. I think that's what I took from this book, is that, because in no way did you say that, you were guaranteeing any results for anything, but I took from the book, again, it's that mindset, whether it's a good day or a bad day, keep that mindset of optimism, because it will make the ride smoother no matter what the end point is of that ride. But, right. And by the way, to reading your book too, I say to myself, we're humans. If you're a human on Earth, shit's going to happen. I mean, like, you can't get away from it. So again, why not have an optimistic mindset, not Pollyannic, but, and to your point, have that purpose, it's everything, can I tell you a story real quick?
Please.
All right. Cause this is about the optimistic mindset. So I used to be, I liked volunteering a lot in different places and areas. So a couple of years ago, I was a volunteer at Englewood Hospital. You know that because you grew up, well, you didn't grow up, but you lived, I see from your book, I see that you
I live in Fort Lee. I knew England.
Correct. You were in bicycling a lot in the book. I'm like, oh, you bicycle there too. You gave me the routes you were going. So anyways, so my job was a candy striper essentially as an adult. And I would roll patients into their whatever operating room or take them out of their room to be discharged. So one day I'm doing my volunteer work just because I like to volunteer, and we'll just call her Mrs. Smith. I'm just making this up, her name, but the woman I'm rolling out to be discharged, I said, okay, Mrs. Smith, as I'm rolling her down the corridor, what car should I look for when I, roll you outside? She's like, oh yeah, whatever. It's a silver Honda. She's like, I'm so happy. I'm going to see my husband and my kids and my grandkids. And she's like, Anthony, they only gave me a few more months to live. I got inoperable cancer. And I'm behind her, pushing her. I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, this is the happiest person I've ever seen that got a death sentence. Like, you would never know. She was just, if she didn't tell me that she, got X amount of time to live and it was, terminal, I would have never known. Like, she was in such good spirits, so happy. And I was like, oh, okay. I go, well, I didn't say anything, but I was like, okay, well, and then I rolled her out and her, she got up and she just ran and gave kisses and hugs to whatever, her family, and took off. Okay. Half hour later, I get another call. I got to take a guy out of a room and discharge him. So I'm like, we'll call him Mr. Smith. Hey, Mr. Smith, whatever. Who are you waiting for? And he's like, I'm not waiting for anybody. When I get outside, I'm taking a taxi. Oh, I said, okay, no family or friends. He's like, no. He was very sad. He's like, I don't have any family or friends. And he goes to me, I'm really going to miss this place. Now I'm behind him pushing the wheelchair. In my head, I'm like, what is this guy talking about? But wait, it gets worse. He's like, yeah, I just had a heart operation and I'm fine. I'm cured and everything is good. But yeah, he's like, I'm just going to really miss the people here and the time I had here. And so yeah, just wheel me out and a taxi should come. Mike, this guy, if you didn't know any better, you would have thought he had the terminal cancer and the woman who had cancer was cured. And that drove into my mind at that moment, kind of what we're talking about, mindset. I mean, and also a purpose. Her purpose was her family. She had something to live for. This poor guy who was much, much younger seemed like he had nothing to live for. And so I learned also there's something more important than our health, and that is relationships, because we're all going to die. But if you don't have friends and family, it's almost not worth living. I mean, and this guy exemplified that, and I hope he's doing better. But anyways, that woman had that positive mindset, the Optimism Cure, that mindset, and it was everything. So anyways, okay.
Those are great stories. That's so interesting.
Yeah. So now, Mike, let me ask you, I have all my questions here. So talk about the mind-body connection. I mean, science keeps on stacking up studies on how important that our mind can make us sick, you get stressed out or talk about that, the mind-body connection.
Well, I think I want to put another piece into the puzzle, which is, which is gratitude. And it relates to your question. I'll tell you, I lived in Fort Lee for 4 years, and one day I walked into I don't know if your readers, your audience understands this, but it's right on the Hudson River, right below the George Washington Bridge, and there's a Revolutionary War park. You may have been it.
Of course, I grew up there in that area.
Yeah, right, exactly. So in this park, there are cannons that what's his name? The famous the guy who wrote the who the I'm going to have to fix this.
That's right. Well, but the moral of the story is,
Well, the point is, these people who were up on this hill shooting their cannons at oncoming English soldiers, and living in these huts in the freezing winter and losing, and they lost. And then they had, Fort Lee is filled with little plaques that say, "This is the retreat
yes,
route."
George Washington, whatever.
Yeah, right. So it was Hamilton, Alexander Hamilton.
Okay.
It was, and I thought back. I said, I became intensely grateful for what they did. And then I kept getting more and more grateful as I got into my car. I was thankful for the people who had built the roads, who had created the country and enabled me to be peacefully on, and it just never stops.
Right.
So gratitude is what we think about that happened to us in the past.
Right.
And it generates optimism if we let it. So it's a segue.
Yes.
And if you don't have that, I mean, you mentioned before, I know that I have a lot of friends about my age, a little bit older, a little bit younger. And some of them are not having very good lives.
Yeah.
They don't have a purpose. They don't have a community. They're just not optimistic. And I just think that we are really the masters of our own fate.
I agree.
I can see now that I lost my wife after 57 years of marriage. This was about 8 or 9 years ago. Found somebody to love, and then moved out to California and found another person to love. And I'm so grateful for this country and it's just so, since you can only have one thought in your head at a time, right?
Yeah.
That's all you can do.
Right.
You fill it with gratitude. I had a neighbor on my floor, very, very. I thought he was just a nasty guy, but he wasn't just nasty. He was in misery. He didn't have friends. He was a pessimist. He would yell at people, and we tried to change him, and it's very hard. But I think having the purpose is to me a very important thing. And another thing that's really important is this thing. You're gonna laugh. What is this thing?
Oh, I have the same thing in my house. I use it every morning.
There you go.
I use it every morning. I do resistant rubber band training every morning, and I go to the gym and hit the weights too. But yes, actually, by the way, now you're getting me down a rabbit hole here, but I just read a study from a couple different universities saying, and I'm going to do a show on this, that there is something more potent and stronger than anti-anxiety medication, and it's a fact, and it's called exercise. They say exercise works better than medication for anxiety. I'm not making this up. Viewers can check it out for themselves. I was blown away because I didn't really realize exercise is, I mean, they got scientific papers on this stuff, and it blew my mind. I was like, whoa, and it's true.
Well, this my girlfriend gave me a book called, it's right here. Hold on a second. I'm selling somebody else's book now. This book.
Art and Longevity, Peter. Oh yeah, I follow him. He's on YouTube also. He's excellent.
So the point is, I'll tell you what happened. I was a gym rat for a very long time, but at 80, I discovered something called slow burn training. I don't know if you know what that is.
Well, I read it. You touched it a little bit on the end of your book.
Yeah. So what they've discovered, and the Japanese, there's a lot of data about this now, and it's all true. If you work a muscle to failure, let me show you as an example. So I'm doing this, and I'm pulling this band.
Yeah.
And at a certain point, I can't pull it anymore, but I try really hard, and finally, if my muscles fail, so I relax. It takes about a minute.
Right.
Well, what happens is, the brain interprets the failure as a threat. So if you don't do any work if you don't go back to working out for 7 days, it will grow the muscle larger. So I got into this, and I would go to a gym, where they had these big Nautilus machines and everything, you know, and I was doing this, I was getting stronger and stronger. I was 80 years old. And then the pandemic hit.
Right.
So I didn't know what I was going to do. And I opened my closet and this thing popped out. And I said, why can't I use this to do slow burn training?
Right.
And that's what that chapter's about. And so then I had a bunch of friends about my age, and every Thursday for 2 years, we did this training. There's nothing, absolutely nothing on the web that has a combination of resistance band training and slow burn. You know, the slow burn. I think I'm the only person doing. I don't know why. It's really terrific. So you can do a 30 minutes of this, and what you said. I want to just re-emphasize what you said. The mind-body connection is so strong. If you go into your 60s, 70s, and 80s with some strength and an exercise program, and you're doing it correctly, and Peter Attia tells you how to do this. It's pretty hard, but you know what I do is I walk with my girlfriend. We walked the 3 miles today on a beach.
Wow.
Wind, and climb some stairs. And then yesterday we worked out with these bands. It's, you know, it's such a wonderful feeling. Well, you know what, exercise has always been fun, but
it releases endorphins. I mean, it's
not just, but you also have the opportunity to be optimistic about your future.
Yeah.
Because he says, if you go into your 70s, in really good shape, you'll probably live to 100, and not only live, but enjoy it.
I believe it. Listen, I would even one up you and say, if you're exercising regularly, you know, whatever, walking, running, swimming, resistance training, even if you're pessimistic, I think exercise is so powerful that it will release those hormones and chemicals, and you have no choice but to be optimistic. The exercise will, it's like a drug. So you almost can't control it. It'll force you to be optimistic. If you're regularly doing it and eating right and sleeping right, like, yeah, it's a weird thing, but I'm not, everything you're saying, I'm not surprised. I mean, it's, you know, and I always tell people, you want to weightlift and you want to do resistance training and exercise, not for your body, but for your mind. It helps the mind more, I think, than actual muscle. I mean, it helps the muscle, of course, but people forget up here, it's an elixir.
Yeah.
So,
well, can I tell you one more story?
Go ahead, hit me.
And maybe this will be, you know, I'm sure we're getting to the end of the program.
Yeah.
But I went back to teaching. I taught physics for many years at high schools. And at 70, I went back because I was bored. I wanted a purpose.
Hey.
And I went back to my old high school in Larchmont. And one of the classes they gave me, I walked into it, and these 10 kids are sitting there, and they know who I am, and say, Dr. Franzblau, congratulations, you just got the losers class. We had losers in the school. 2 or 3 days later, my son-in-law called me. He had been in a conference where a guy named Jacques Brandis, who was an inventor, figured out how to make a peanut shelling machine.
Yes.
You know this story?
I read it, yeah. But you can say
I read it in the book, yeah. So it turns out that Malawi depends on peanuts for its, you know, crops and everything, and it's very hard to shell a bushel of peanuts. It takes a bunch of women sitting on little rocks chanting for 10 hours, and their fingers are bleeding, and they get one bushel. So Brandis invented a machine that it's just like, it's a cement thing with some, you know, gears, and you turn it, and in 5 minutes you have perfectly shelled peanuts. You get a whole bushel. So my kids got interested in this. We had a Malawi family living in our community. They came and talked to us about Malawi, and these losers raised enough money to buy their own machine so we could learn the physics of it, because it was a physics class, and also to send 7 machines to Malawi, which we did.
Wow.
And the point about that was, so I had a purpose, but they also had a purpose. Now we were talking about how if these machines helped the natives get some, you know, some education and some healthcare, so those kids grow up, and then so there's an infinite, you know, it just goes on forever. And so we were walking around, and there's a beach in my town, and some of the kids were lifeguards, and that summer, and we were smiling. I said, why are we smiling? Because we did something really great.
Yeah.
And I just felt you know, this was this was purpose worthy of my life to do this.
Yeah.
And that led me to do other new things.
Yeah,
So
and I think that's when people die, when they retire and they have no hobby, they have no more purpose. Even before retirement, too, people have dead end jobs they hate. But yeah, when you lose that purpose, no matter what it is, and you talked about it in the book, how it's important to have hobbies too, and to learn new things and community. I would say probably, in my opinion, reading this book, community is probably more important than purpose. If you have no friends,
yeah,
if you're a loner, like, I don't have to tell you, but this damn device is really not bringing us together. It's tearing us apart. And social media, I always tell people, yeah, the 5,000 friends you have on Facebook, those are not your friends. Like, friends are people you break bread with, you shake a hand, you give a hug, a kiss. I think if you have that, that is probably the ace card. And of course, purpose is important. But if you don't have friends or family that you can see daily or weekly, man, you're gonna a rough world, bro.
it's really hard. I'm living in a little town in Northern California now called Aptos. It's on the beach. I came here because my daughter and my grandchildren and my son lived here, and they needed some help. And it's an environment where people are kind, communicative, inclusive.
Yep.
It's like I walked into this place. It's really unbelievable.
Yeah. Not Jersey.
It's not, well, I like Jersey, but this is a different story. My son-in-law's mother came from Boston after a few years ago, and she's sitting there, and about on the third day, she turned to everybody and she said, "Where's the suffering?" You know, there wasn't any suffering.
I mean, yeah,
but it's easy if you live, but if you don't live in an environment like this, you've got to make this all work, and relationships are absolutely number one. Yeah. I hope you're going to write a book about this. You really are.
Well, Mike, my book is the show. I talk to great people like yourself. I talk to yoga instructors, cancer survivors, and the whole show Wellness Week is about that positivity that we can control. I always say 8 out of 10 illnesses are our own doing. We can't control everything, but we can control a whole lot. And also mindset. Yeah, we can control everything when it comes to mindset. Going back to the Optimism Cure is. So this is my way of writing that book, like talking to people like yourself. And
that's wonderful. It's really necessary, and it's wonderful.
Yeah. As we get close to time here, what would be the one thing that you would want people to know about the book? If you could kind of sum it up for people, what piece of advice would you want to give the younger you or anybody, any age?
I think I would say that you have the ability to control your environment and what you do. It's your mind. It's who you are. And if you waste it, you're not going to have a happy life. But you have an incredible opportunity through gratitude, optimism, all of these things to make a contribution and really have fun in your life. And that's what I would hope.
Yeah. It's funny. In the few minutes we have left, I find that, and you tell me what you think, but the most successful people that I know, and I'm not talking about money, I'm talking about joy of life. The most successful people I know, when I ask them how much of life is luck and how much of it is smart, hard work or our own doing, successful people say 95% of life is hard work, smart work, I control. But the people who are the people who are defeatists, the people who are the most unhappy, they say no, life is 95% luck. And I always find that people that say that life is 90% luck or majority luck, those are the people who are the most unhappy. That's my observation.
That's fascinating.
Yeah. I think the people who are the happiest are people that say, I control my destiny. I can make this happen. I can't control everything, but I can certainly control my mindset. And when I get lemons, I make lemonade. We all go through rough patches. And I read your book and I'm saying to myself, wow, you lost your wife, you cancer. And, I think people think that people who are happy have it easy, that they don't have a hard day ever. And this is why I wanted to have you on, because you've gone through a lot and you're still smiling, you're still enjoying life. And people need to hear that, because I think people that just see the facade and say, oh, look, he's in a good mood, he's got an easy life. You don't know, that's not true. And so
here's one little hint. You may have caught this at the end. And it's a way of controlling your life. We've lived in the past. Here's the past. We're in the present, and there's a future. For most people, it turns out that their past is really clogging up their future.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you're having the same, so what your job is to pluck all that past and get it out of the way and open your future to emptiness, then
Right.
anything can happen.
Right.
Anything
Right.
is possible.
A blank slate, a clear canvas. Right.
Exactly. And if you can do that, there really are no limits.
Right. Yeah, it's true. I firmly believe that too. And again, I'm not talking about money. I'm talking about the joy of life.
Yes, the joy of life
Right.
is part
Yeah.
of it.
So, Michael, thank you so much. Is there any last words before we sign off? And thank you for being on.
Well, thank you for having me. I've really, really enjoyed this.
I got to have you back on again.
I have I'm finishing a memoir cookbook with my girlfriend.
Okay. Okay.
It's the story of my life through
Okay.
cooking, and it's
Well, I always say food is medicine.
exactly.
It can make and break you.
I
So
would love to come on again. Thank you so much.
thank you again, Michael, and thank you everyone for watching. Check back for some more great content, and happy holidays, everybody. Mike, I'm signing us off in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thank you, everybody. Bye bye.